Hey YouTube, it's Kel. I hope this video finds you well. I just wanted to pop on here tonight, and I actually I'm sure that in the future I will go more into some of the addiction knowledge that I have, because I did work at treatment centers for, gosh, at least 5 years, might have been longer, as a therapist. And so I really got to see not only that, but I come from a family that had addiction in it. And so like I know it firsthand also. So I really kind of have a heart for just the psychoeducation aspect of it, because especially, for addicts too, but they do have AA and, children of alcoholics and parents of alcoholics and siblings of alcoholics. And by the way, when I say alcoholics in this podcast, I mean any drug addict, which I know they are all different, but I just am talking about, it's just I can't say the addict, I guess. But if I switch to alcoholic, just know I'm talking about the addict, which I hate labeling, but in this case, we kind of have to. So, but I wanted to speak to, kids of the addict, parents of addicts, siblings of addicts, because one of the, I thought you might want to hear that one of the biggest themes that I saw in working in addiction treatment centers is that when I would continuously bring addicts, I'm just going to use the word, know that I hate labeling. By the way, I hate labeling people who suffer from addiction by the word addict. It has, it is not fully who they are, so I don't define them by that, but I also do think I'm not, so I don't think they are, quote, just addicts. I think they are people who suffer from addiction, but also I am fine with using the word addict because I think they would be too, and also, in this case, it's just easiest to use that word. So, okay, so when I would bring addicts into like their first intake session or do therapy with them in the treatment center, because I would usually see them from anywhere from 30 days to up to like 6 months, sometimes even longer. Not in the treatment center, but sometimes, anyways, it's a long story. But so I would ask them, what is it that finally got you interested in being sober? And two things were always the answer. I mean, almost always, unless there was just some no, it was really two things. And I wanted to share this because I think people would be interested. Number one is they either had some kind of what they call rock bottom experience, which is when things just get so bad that their life isn't working for them anymore. Their addiction isn't working for them anymore. And so they're like, desperate times call for desperate measures. I have to change because this is no longer working for me and I'm miserable. And then number two, what they often said was when the people closest to me broke off the relationship, because they are no longer, and this is the truth, they're no longer enabling or participating in the dance of the relationship that could be enabling the behavior by being an emotional cushion or whatnot. So I always found that I wanted to relay that to people because, as someone who again was in a family that suffered from addiction, I know how hard it can be to, what the phrase would be is detach in love with, someone who suffers from addiction and understand that you don't have control over their addiction process, even though sometimes you feel like you might, but you don't. And the truth is you really have to let it go, surrender it to your higher power, surrender it to wherever you want, but you cannot try to control something that is out of your control or it ends up making you crazy. I'm going to do a future podcast on codependency, and the symptoms of that. But I really tonight in this video just wanted to give people who are close to an addict permission to let people sadly hit their rock bottom or fall on their face. I know how scary that is, but there is no other way. They're gonna have to do it anyways. And sometimes if you just provide a cushion, you're prolonging that from happening. Does that make sense? One analogy that I liked to use when I was doing treatment was it's like if a person keeps falling over, but then their family members or loved ones or whatever keep sliding a pillow in there to cushion their fall, they never say, oh, that hurt so badly, I'm going to watch my feet next time, or I'm going to watch it so that I don't fall again, But if the codependency or enabling behaviors it's like sliding a pillow or whatever in there when a person is falling, and you're cushioning them from the consequences of their life. And just thought that people might want to hear that firsthand. I mean, you hear it from addicts all the time that they don't want people trying to control them or their addiction, So it's a win-win all around when you can learn how to detach with love. You don't need to be cold. You don't need to be rude. I'm going to go into another video. I'm going to talk about how addiction is not a selfish thing. It is someone coping with their problems in the only way they probably know how, but also a way that becomes obviously very destructive for everyone. So, including the addict. So, all of this to say, I just wanted to, there's a book out there called Codependent No More. I think it's Melody Beattie. And if you are in a relationship with someone close to you who suffers from addiction, I just want you to know that book's out there. There's also Codependence Anonymous meetings that if you are considering cutting off the relationship, and you can do it temporarily, you can always say, hey, I love you and I really care about you, and it terrifies me to detach from you temporarily while you figure this out, but I have to for my own well-being, and also because I think it's the best thing to help you get growth. And if, you can always say, if you go to treatment, if you have, 3 months sobriety or whatever your boundary is, you can say, we can reestablish a relationship, so it's really up to you, or you might not want to, but again, these boundaries are up to you. But what I really wanted to let everybody know is that the addicts themselves in treatment centers say that the things that got them to stop eventually was a hitting rock bottom, negative consequences to the point where their lives became unmanageable, and losing the closest relationships in their life. And when those closest relationships finally put boundaries down, they might have, wandered for a week or 2 weeks or even a month or whatever, but they said it was just miserable and they didn't want to do it anymore. Life, quote, isn't worth living without your loved ones. And, that was the common theme. So, I mean, of course, every situation is different. I do not want to tell other people what to do. But I am just sharing my experience as a licensed marriage and family therapist who worked as a therapist in treatment centers for so long, and what I heard from addicts themselves. And if you can hear my cat in the background, she's in the other room. So I will go into this stuff more in future podcasts, but I wanted to just hit on it because for people struggling, oftentimes it's harder for you to watch someone else suffer than it is for you to suffer yourself. And so again, get that book, Codependent No More, really helps you understand how to set boundaries and learn that you can only control yourself, and the addict can only control themselves, and you are not responsible for their behavior. You have nothing to do with it. If they are going to use, they're going to use, and they might find excuses, but and I have a big heart for addicts. I think they're amazing people. I think one of the biggest reasons why they actually use is because they're incredibly hard on themselves and very sensitive. And so I have no negative connotations with addiction. In fact, one of my friends who was a recovering addict, and she was actually a therapist, she said, addicts are some of the most smart, incredibly creative people you will meet. Not only that, but what the truth is that like the addiction or the drug worked for them as a solution until it wasn't a solution anymore. Does that make sense? So it was a solution to their problems for a while until they just couldn't control it anymore. So it has nothing to do with selfishness. It really doesn't. It's not, it's not as simple as that. And I especially want kids out there of addicts to know that if someone, one of your parents is an addict or something like that, it has nothing to do with you. Do not think that if you were just a better person or didn't like make them mad or, you know, whatever, that they would use less. You know, it has in fact, I'm sure they love you very much, but just they have their own, it's a struggle with coping, and it goes into like genetics and physiology, but also it's a self-perpetuating cycle. And so again, Codependence Anonymous meetings are out there. That Codependent No More book is a great place to start. There are a ton of resources out there for you, but I mostly wanted to relay the message that addicts themselves told me that the two biggest reasons why they stopped ultimately is rock bottom, and because the family members that or loved ones that they had told them that they just would, you know, were done and did not want to talk to them anymore. So again, I'm not telling anyone out there what to do. I do not, you know, would never want to be held accountable for that either, but I'm sharing my own personal experience as a therapist in different treatment centers for 5 years, and there was a common theme in their motivation to get sober. So anyways, I'm sending love tonight, and I'm thinking of you, and I hope that you're doing well wherever you are.